if you'd prefer not to be in the recording, which will be shared with people who booked after the event, then please do feel free to turn your camera off. We hope that you'll feel comfortable kind of unmuting and joining in the chat as we go through the session as well, because we'd love to have you join in as well. Welcome to this CPD session. We're really excited to be collaborating here at Art UK with the Superpower of Looking programme with folks at Art Bytes, and to be thinking about how our programmes can complement each other really nicely. So we're really excited to share both our programmes today and to think about how they join up. I'll start by introducing myself. I'm Jenny Thornber. I'm the Learning Coordinator on the Superpower of Looking project at Art UK. Shall I hand over next to Carolyn for you to introduce yourself?
Thank you, Jenny. Hi, I'm Carolyn Murray. I'm the Northwest Regional Art Coordinator for Art Bytes, and I'll tell you a bit more about that later.
And my name is Emily Carter, and I cover the whole of the North for Art Bytes, just little old me. So I'm North East, Yorkshire, East Midlands and West Midlands.
Lovely. So delighted to have everyone with us today. We're going to start with an introduction to the Superpower of Looking, and then an introduction to Art Bytes, and then from there we've got an opportunity to look at one painting in particular. I'd like to share the Superpower of Looking resource and have a little look at that painting together, and then Emily is going to be talking a little bit about some really amazing creative ideas that you might be able to do with your students in response to that painting, with a view to participating in the Art Bytes programme and competition. All right, so I'm going to start sharing my screen.
We'll just ask everybody to turn their mics off, and then just so that we can hear. Good thinking. Yeah, and of course we will absolutely allow opportunities, won't we, for people to unmute and ask questions, particularly at the end.
Can you tell me how to unmute? Sorry, I'm not used to Teams.
At the top right of the screen, there's the little mic icon, and if you just click on,
it's in there, is it? Right. It doesn't
just
say
click on the
actual thing.
All right, so I'll start by introducing the organisation I represent actually. So I'm from Art UK. We are an art education charity. We're all about democratising access to art, and we work with public collections across the UK to make art digitally accessible. Our webpage is a great place to discover new art and artists, to kind of find out what art is local to you, whether it's in museums and galleries or if it's, you know, outdoor sculpture and murals. And also as educators, it's a great place to go and discover learning resources as well for children of all ages and for lifelong learners. But we're here to talk particularly about the Superpower of Looking project. Here at Art UK, this is our new vision for learning. We started the rollout in the last academic year, and making really exciting progress in spreading the word amongst particularly primary schools at the moment. So our vision through Superpower of Looking is to transform the visual literacy skills of children, starting with primary school children, but our plans for the next academic year see us expanding into secondary. And we all know that our children are growing up in such an image-saturated world. If you think about all the imagery that they'll see, not just now, but as they grow up, surrounded by social media and advertising and AI and deepfakes, it's never felt more important to teach our children, to empower them to be able to interrogate and question and understand the images that they see. So that's our aim, teaching those kind of crucial, lifelong, transferable skills of visual literacy, taking the world of artworks as our starting point, so we can do that sort of really important work through the art and design curriculum. Sorry. I want my next slide, don't I? Here we go. So the Superpower teaching approach. At the heart of Superpower is lively classroom discussion based around an artwork. As you can see in our picture here, kids have all got their Superpower specs, their Superpower goggles on. They're all looking together at Superpower of Looking artwork at an Henri Rousseau painting. And it's all about developing these skills of close looking, being able to articulate what you see, noticing those little details. And it can be really student-led. Every class will see something different in the painting and take the discussion in a completely different direction. Our resources are curriculum-based because we work across the UK. They support the curricula across the 4 nations. There are opportunities for cross-curricular learning. At the heart of it is supporting children to critically observe, analyse, question, interpret and empathise. I touched at the beginning on how important it is for us to develop children's visual literacy skills, but oracy is also really key in Superpower as well, with it being such a discussion-based approach. Talking together about paintings is really fantastic for promoting that really good quality talk in the classroom. We're also very keen to increase children's confidence in using subject-specific language, introducing terminology that helps them to think like an artist, talk like an artist. We don't shy away from using terminology in other subjects, and the same in art and design. We want to be able to teach children to be able to talk about composition and colour and light confidently. And we know that looking at digital artworks is not a replacement for seeing the real thing. But we're really keen to increase children's access to art, getting more digital images of artworks into the classroom, with a view to increasing that interest, that love of art, and that desire to go and visit art galleries as well. So if you were to hop on the Superpower web pages, and you've got QR code there if you do want to kind of pop it with your phone and have a look at what's available online. We've got over 20 lesson resources with more coming out all the time. We're launching a new one next Monday. And they sit within themes, portraits, history, landscapes, still life, everyday and identity. So there's something there hopefully for everyone to see where those can kind of fit within your curriculum planning. One thing that's really, really crucial to every Superpower resource, never sounds quite as exciting when I first introduce it, is a high-res artwork. But that means that we can create a zoom feature that I'll show you in a little bit, so you can look super closely at that artwork. You can say project it on your screen in your classroom. It's high res than I could crib off Google. And so if one child notices something intriguing in one corner of the painting, you can zoom in, you can look really closely. It's really great for sort of honing those powers of observation. Our resources also come with audio descriptions, so these really rich descriptions of painting, particularly written for children with vision impairment, but also we hear from teachers that they find other kind of uses for them as well. All our resources come with teacher support notes. We know that there are teachers who are super confident in teaching art and design, and we know that there are some who don't feel that's their subject that they're most confident in, and so we always have notes so that they're there if you need them, you want them. We have some really lovely presenter-led films where an artist goes and looks at an artwork in the gallery, and kind of models for children how to start looking closely and saying what they can see in the work. And we have everyone learning activities, so written particularly with experts in inclusive practice, there to support everyone with engaging with artworks. So they might help learners who are SEND to engage with artworks, but also all learners as well. They take a very sensory approach, but also involve activities to make and create too. I'm going to quickly mention our Teacher Champion scheme in exchange for embracing Superpower, for embedding it in your school, sharing it with your colleagues, sharing it with your networks of teachers. We have some really sort of great rewards. So we have limited edition artwork prints available that teachers can claim if they embrace Superpower. You can actually see in the picture that this year's print is designed by Bob and Roberta Smith, and here one of our teachers very kind of proudly showing off her print. But in addition to that, our schools officers here in the team can offer practical support to help you start your Superpower of Looking journey. They can offer one free CPD session for your school or multi-academy trust within the state sector. And we have sort of events throughout the year as well. Our Superpower of Looking's Art Adventure was a virtual school trip that we led a couple of weeks ago, and we'll be offering again next year. It was open to absolutely everybody. And for a very small number of schools every year, we're able to offer a really special opportunity to have an artwork from a local collection in your school for the day. So you can have a whole series of kind of exciting activities around that. And throughout the year, we've got opportunities to attend events and CPD on our various resources and connect through teacher networks as well. The QR code on the screen there will take you to our Teacher Champion Scheme sign-up page, but we'll share all of the links afterwards as well. So, how can you get involved? I'll draw my presentation to a close now, but you can sign up for our schools newsletter and sign up as a Teacher Champion all at the same time. It's one form. You can access free resources now. Everything's freely available online on the Superpower of Looking website. Nothing's behind a paywall. And you can look out for new resources, videos, lesson plans coming soon. And if you like, you can follow us on socials as well. We're on X, we're on Instagram, and we're on Facebook. So whistle-stop tour of Superpower of Looking. Carolyn, what we wanted to do next was to hand over to you to introduce Art Bytes. And I believe you wanted to start with a film, was that right? Which I can show on my computer.
You need to unmute it, Carolyn.
Just
click on the icon.
Forgot to do that. Sorry about that, folks. I was just saying I'll talk about the details in a moment after we've watched this short film.
And Carolyn, you must shout if the sound doesn't work, and I've forgotten to enable sound.
Hi, I'm Lucy Byrne. I'm the Managing Director of Dot Art, which is the organisation behind Art Bytes. We've been running a similar programme in our local region, the Liverpool City region, for the past 10 years now, and we've seen amazing impact with that programme.
I was delighted to be involved, and I've known about Art Bytes through their social media presence.
We've worked with almost 9,000 children now over the past 10 years and young people, and seen the improvement of their confidence, their skill level, their mental health, all sorts of different things. We had an independent report telling us the impacts that they'd had on those students, and we've had amazing feedback from both teachers and students across those 10 years.
I think it's really good for students to create art without having to worry about any grading, but I think it is important always to highlight the arts.
So I'm really very happy to be involved, especially given that it's work that involves a variety of schools.
So I think arts education is vital, and I think the government do well to remember that and to ensure that art is a valid subject and should be taught in schools, and creativity should be encouraged at all levels, you know.
I really like the public vote, and I think the students really like the public vote because we do assemblies on it, we send letters home, we tweet, we put it on Instagram, social media, we get all the parents on board, we get every teacher in the school to vote with all of their classes.
I think it's really important to open their eyes and to see that the opportunities that exist within the arts and the creative industries, by encouraging them to visit venues in their local areas, creative venues, cultural venues, art spaces, and realising that those spaces are for them, they're for everybody, they're usually free to visit, and they're usually very welcoming places.
We're absolutely thrilled to be involved in the Art Bytes exhibition. We feel like it's been a brilliant opportunity for the children to showcase their talent and their work in a different environment.
I was really amazed and impressed with the number of schools that have participated in this competition. I think that really pleasantly surprised that so many schools wanted to be involved.
And as soon as they can perhaps meet practicing artists, creating artwork themselves and feeling part of that whole infrastructure, it begins to open doors and open eyes and realise that actually that there is a place for young people working with creativity and in a creative way.
Thank you. I'm just going to share my screen. Bear with me. No, not that one. Can you see the Art Bytes logo now?
Yep.
Yep, great. Okay, so that film was just a kind of snapshot of the sort of flavour of Art Bytes. So I'm just going to give you a bit of background and a bit more detail about how it works and what it is. So as was mentioned on the film, it's a national competition for primary, secondary and SEND schools and different AP settings as well, which combines an inter-school art competition with a bespoke virtual gallery. And the idea behind it is to, it is about celebration. It's not about competing. I just want to get that point across very early on, because I think people just think of it as that. And it is that, but it isn't, in the sense that that's not what we're about. We're about showcasing and celebrating young people's creativity. After we have a celebration event for teachers and students and their families. So they get invited to a cultural partner venue, which I'll talk about in a second, or they can watch it back at school when it's live streamed. The initial competition actually launched in 2021. And for that first one, we actually had almost 1,300 pupils take part. So we were very delighted with that result the first time we'd done it. But the background to it was the competition that's called Dot Art Schools, which is something that I've also been managing for the last 12 years. And we used that learning and the impact we got and the discovery we made with that to build this new programme for schools across England. It's, as I mentioned, it's about nurturing talent and building their confidence so that children can see that it's, galleries are for them, to help them engage with culture and not just feel like it's something that's very much for other people. I liked what you just said before, Jenny, when you were talking about the superpower of looking, and you mentioned thinking like an artist as one of the sort of elements of this. And I think that's kind of where we're coming from in another sense. It's that opportunity to go and actually present their work in another arena where lots of people can view it and appreciate it and start to give them that understanding of what that world might be like for them to get involved in. So in terms of the way that it works, we have 9 regions that work in, which four for Emma, 4 for Emily, who's here today, my colleague Emma, who actually covers the South, and I just cover the Northwest as well as doing the Dot Art Schools. We have a cultural partner in each of those 9 regions, which is essentially an art gallery or museum with a sort of high profile in the region that also is interested and supportive of what we're about and what we're trying to do and wants to work with schools. And we've had people like the Whitworth Art Gallery in Manchester, Kettle's Yard in Cambridge, the Chisenhale in London. So that, they're really good, important places that children should get to access anyway. So it's another way of them doing that by going to their celebration events in their area. In terms of how you enter the competition and what you actually submit, there's no theme at all on purpose. We don't want to make your job harder. We know you're super busy and pressured all the time. And we just want you to be able to tap into what arts activity you're already doing, or if it's not something you're able to offer regularly, that you can do it as an after school club or lunch club, or you can just canvass the pupils and say, if you're working on artwork at home, if there's something you want to bring in and submit, that's fine. There's no fixed theme. What we do cover in terms of the media and the techniques is literally more or less anything: painting, photography, print, digital, collage, mixed media, sculpture. It is all submitted by photograph, though, just to be aware of that. It is online in that sense. So what happens at the moment, we're in the period where we're inviting schools to get involved, get on board. If you decide you want to do it, you can register online through our simple form. It just takes 10 minutes, 5 minutes if you're quick. And it's we leave that registration open until Christmas. And then that gives people still time to start preparing the artwork that they're going to actually enter. You can submit photographs of students' works via our website, and we will handhold you through it. It's not hard anyway, but we're there on hand to make sure you're okay and you know what you're doing. If you get unstuck, we can help and support you through that. We actually build the page. You don't have to do anything clever to do with technology on that level at all. We do that in the back end. The artworks you can submit are 1 per student, up to 30, and ideally a minimum of 3, depending on if you're a SEND setting, you might have a smaller number of people wanting to get involved. Then, you know, the stages in terms of selection processes are that we have a panel of shortlisting judges who will pick the top 3 entries from each school once the work has gone live on the web page. So you'll have your own portfolio with all your entries and a bit about your school at the top. And you can see this on our website afterwards if you want to have a look. And then they do that shortlisting process in spring. And then we open that up to a public vote online. So the top 3 from each school will have a voting button underneath their artwork entry, and you can click on it and vote for them. That is open to literally anyone who can use the internet, but the idea behind it is to encourage your school to get behind the idea of what those young people are doing and support them and give the school more profile for its arts activities that they're doing. And then we actually even give a prize now for the school that gets the most votes for their children's work, just to encourage people to really get on board with it. So the votes are in. The winners of the vote for that school, so out of the top 3, whoever wins that the most votes goes through to be the winner for their school and gets a place in the virtual exhibition. Then the virtual exhibition is put together, and we have a panel reconvene and select the overall national and regional winners and runners-up for each region. And then we don't tell people that until June, when we all get together for our celebration events in person in the regions, in the 9 regions. And everyone can watch that on the same day, where we will have a film that records the reactions of those schools and their pupils being told that they've won, and how they feel about that. And then we live stream that to schools as well if they're not able to join us. And then the virtual gallery doors are opened. So that's how it sort of works. Why should you do it? Why get involved? We all know, well, I hope we all know, because you're here today, that you know the benefits and impact the arts can have for young people, or for all of us. But in terms of schooling, it's about that broad and balanced curriculum, building cultural capital by having the opportunity to also go to an art gallery or museum as part of that programme. And having done it for the last few years, I just see the absolute delight on a young person's face when they're in a celebration event and they look round and someone says their name out loud and says, "You've won something," or "You're getting a certificate now and being presented with it," and their families are there, their teachers are there. The pride that they feel is really important, I think. And obviously for the school, it's about raising the profile of what you're doing and what you're trying to achieve with culture in your school. And it's a great way to engage students' families, getting them to vote when it's that stage, visiting the exhibition itself and coming to the celebration. If you're doing ArtsMark, it's another way that you can contribute. We're an ArtsMark partner, so we can also support you with that as well. What do you actually get, just in terms of the way that the thing works? The entry fee we charge is done because we are a small, not-for-profit community interest company. We don't have any annual funding, so this fee that we charge is literally just to make sure we can sustain the programme. We want to be inclusive and accessible. If your school really wants to do it, but you're going to struggle with the budget, please get in touch. We have some sponsorship opportunities where we've got people like the Art Society on board to help support some schools in different areas around the country. So there may be a chance that we can help you with that. So don't let that put you off. If you do sign up and register before Christmas, you'll be getting a dedicated page for your school on the website with your children's featured artwork on it when you submit them in just before February half term. You'll have your work exhibited. The winner's work will be in the virtual exhibition as well. We give certificates to all students to get involved, as in a participation certificate. And then if they're shortlisted or a regional or national winner, they also will get other certificates and prizes. And the prizes can be a mixture of things. We actually give prizes like, you know, art materials, lots of goodie bags, and art books, that kind of thing. And we also give the winning schools prizes. The teacher gets an Art UK pass, not Art UK, sorry, teacher's pass, so you can go into galleries for a discounted rate. So we're trying to acknowledge the teachers as well as the young people and their artwork. So I'm going to just show you a couple of things that teachers have said, really, because I think it's better that they tell you why it's a good idea to do it than we do. This is from a SEND school, well, Manchester Hospital School. That's the teacher on the side there with their lanyard, don't give away. Art Bytes really does allow all students' artwork to be viewed at an even level. It's about, you know, motivating them, and also they know they're different, but this gives them a chance to be the same as everyone else. We have a page on our website about SEND and AP settings and how we can support you, but it's actually, we don't treat those entries any differently than any other school applying. So just to be aware of that. Got these little tiny films which will see if they'll work. Teachers.
I remember winning an art prize when I was at school, and I've never forgotten it. It's just, you know, for a self-esteem and for the future and so on, and it'll just encourage you so much. So we're so happy to be involved.
For me, like, art's a passion, it has been all my life. I think it's absolutely more important now than it ever was. But I think it is important always to highlight the arts. I think it's really good for students to create art without having to worry about any grading. This really gave her an opportunity to put herself out there, but in a very different way.
And this final one, just saying, Art Bytes has become an integral part of our school calendar. We use it, the process, to promote art in school, give opportunity for the children to talk about their artwork and that of others, as back what Jenny was saying about, you know, building visual literacy and oracy. And they run an Art Bytes club for their year fives to do it. So they're producing work during that club. Then they can sit together and discuss the work and decide on which pieces actually get entered as well, which is another way of engaging them. So that's what I'm going to say at the moment. Obviously, you're very welcome to ask questions in the chat, and we'll come back to those towards the end of the session. Thanks for listening.
Carolyn, I wonder, just while there's a question popped up in the chat from Katie right now, if it's worth answering it rather than waiting to the end. Katie asks, with a through school EYFS to Key Stage 5, do we need to pay 2 entry fees?
So the simple answer is yes, if you enter two age groups. The way it works, there's a year 5 entry or year 9, not from 5 to 9, year 5 or year 9. If you've got a school like that where you've got both, you can enter either or both, but we would treat them as 2 separate schools, in the sense that you would get your own page for each of those schools. So you could have, you know, up to 60 entries essentially. You'd have 30 year 5s, 30 year 9s. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question, Katie? Just typing away, I think. Great. Okay, yeah, that's good. And it's £195 plus VAT for the primaries and £295 plus VAT for the secondaries. Okay.
Wow, lovely. So in the remainder of the time we've got, I would like to share one artwork with you, have a little quick look at it from the Superpower of Looking resources, and then I want to leave plenty of time for Emily to explore creative responses to it. So I'm going to share my screen and we'll have a look at painting. What I'm not going to do is tell you anything about it. It's possible that you've seen this painting before. It's possible that it's a new one to you today, but let's pretend we're going into it with fresh eyes. I'm gonna invite you to put yourself in the position of the children in your class, and just simply look at the painting and say what you see. Because I can't see the chat, Carolyn and Emily are really helpfully gonna read out some of the responses, but I do hope that you'll join in the chat. And as we look at this picture, just tell me simply kind of what do you see as we start to look at this. I know there will be some clues in the the bar at the top of my screen that give away what this might be. But as you start to look at it, I'm going to zoom in with the zoom function that I promised. And I'd just like to know what you notice. Any thoughts so far?
Not so far. Shall I off while we're waiting for people to type?
I'm going to get you to give some suggestions, Carolyn.
I'm really enjoying the gorgeous African prints on the shirt that the tailor's wearing. That's what I noticed first.
Someone's put a manual worker.
Manual worker. Oh, what tools did you notice that you spotted in the painting? I'm going to keep zooming in a little bit.
Different shades of blue.
Oh, lovely, different shades of blue. He's got gorgeous clothes, hasn't he?
Tools of the trade, somebody's saying.
This is where the zoom features are really useful, because there are some tools of his trade that are quite easy to see. We notice right away. I think children might notice these scissors in the pocket.
Someone says a tailor from the West End. Scissors.
Tailor from the West End. Yeah, he's quite a snazzy tailor. And of course, we're approaching this as adults, aren't we? Let's imagine we might be looking at this with a primary school class. We wouldn't take for granted, of course, that a tailor is necessarily on their radar as a profession. But by looking at the sort of the tools of his trade that we can spot, we can start to kind of inch closer towards working out that this is somebody who works with clothes, who works with fabric. I noticed. Oh, go for it, Emily.
Someone just said his sleeve seems ornate.
Fabulous shirt sleeve.
Yeah.
Look at him. He's folded back that cuff, hasn't he, to show off that really beautiful frilly cuff. He's so beautifully dressed. I noticed something in this hand as well. What I kind of imagine must be a tape measure or something similar.
Yes, someone mentioned that actually in the chat. Yeah, they did.
Oh, did anyone notice anything else? I'm gonna go upwards, I think.
Someone's put, I love the fabric remnants floating around in the background. They remind me of the shapes Matisse used in his collages. Yes.
Oh, gorgeous. They are like the cutouts. Yeah. Yeah, so we've got these, they're just sort of floating in space, aren't they? These I mean, are they remnants of fabric? Are they patterns? This sort of for us to decide, perhaps. I'm not aware that we've been able to find out that much about this painting. I love that.
In the pocket.
Yeah, if we look really closely, we can see needles and pins in that pocket there with his little thumb tucked into his pocket, quite nonchalant. I'm gonna go up to the top where my favourite detail is. If anyone notices anything else, and please do keep chipping in the chat if you like.
Someone just said a tailor. I think the game's up because I gave the game away. Sorry.
The game, yeah. I mean, it doesn't help that my if you notice the sort of the bar at the top of my screen, it says for tailor. I couldn't hide that. He's got these lovely needles that are already threaded with different colours of thread in his collar. So we can start to look at these little details, and you know, if we didn't already sort of know that he was a tailor and those weren't things that we were able to recognise quite quickly, you can see how with a class we'd be able to kind of inch towards reaching that conclusion. Is there anything else anyone noticed?
Yeah, there's a comment that's just come in. It says his skin is brown. I think that's an interesting point because that hasn't been brought up yet. It's all about what he's wearing or what's in the background, but actually who he is as well.
Yeah, absolutely. This is from a series by Lubaina Hamid, in which she depicts a series of 4 kind of confident black men exploring black male identity. We've touched a little bit on the African prints as well, and we know that she did some research into the collections at Manchester Art Gallery to inform the fabrics and the patterns that we see in this series, of which this is only one of those works.
Yeah, she's just picking up on that point and saying it's a bit of a difficult conversation when we start talking about skin colour, using the correct terminology. It should be skin tone, really, I think, in that sense. But yeah, good point. And someone's also mentioned Alexander McQueen.
Alexander McQueen, yes, I like it. Anything else that anyone wanted to comment on?
What is this orange frame down the bottom?
Oh, I wish I had the answer. We've talked a lot about that and we haven't been able to find out. Does anyone have any thoughts on what they think it might be? Sort of object. His foot's standing on it, isn't it?
It could be a like a thing that you wear, like a not a corset, but like a whale,
like a crinoline.
Yeah, like that kind of idea.
Shoulder or something.
Tiny waist for that, but people wear those, and then they pop something over the top of it, like a petticoat or something.
Yeah, it reminds me of one of those as well. I think have I heard it called a farthingale, maybe. And some children think it's a tape measure that's kind of unfurled and is wound on the floor. But Superpower is about inviting children to make their own ideas, kind of informed by what they can see in the painting. So they're open to guess and to kind of form their own reasoned judgments. I only want to look at.
Sorry, I've just noticed he's got 2 different shoelaces on.
Yeah.
Has
in the chat as well. Michelle.
Has the closer you look, the more you notice different things. He's got different coloured shoelaces. I like that each pocket is a different colour, a different design as well. Before we move on, I mean, does this painting tell us anything about this man and his character, do you think? Can you learn anything about him? Apart from the fact that he's a tailor.
Oh, someone just said he doesn't look happy.
Doesn't look happy. Oh.
Interesting.
He's got a serious expression, hasn't he? For sure. Who's he looking at?
Someone else thinks he looks confident.
Yeah. Oh, can somebody tell me why they think he looks confident? I like that.
He's standing tall, isn't he?
Like, Michelle?
Yeah. Before you zoom out.
He looks youngish, someone else has said.
Does, yeah. Looks youngish. I liked what you were saying, Emily, about him standing tall. Both feet are firmly on the ground, aren't they? Shoulders back. He's standing with confidence. If we were in a classroom, maybe we'd try and recreate it to get that feeling.
Someone's just said, all creative people look serious. And he has a direct gaze, so yes, it's quite straight at you, isn't it?
For me, it looks like he's confident to wear something that is a bit different, and that could be a beautiful conversation to open up with the kids about people who wear things that are a bit different, and express themselves through the clothing.
I love that. Yeah, absolutely. I think he's someone who's thought very carefully about what he's put on as well, hasn't he? He's not just thrown this on. If we look for, we can see the red of his belt picked up in the red of his shoes. Those colours in his beautiful jacket are picked up in the t-shirt he's got underneath. So he feels like somebody who's really thought about how he's going to put together this outfit, doesn't he? Unless there's anything else that anyone would like to share, I will hop out of my presentation, hop out of showing my screen, because I'm really excited to hear how we might go from exploring this artwork in the classroom using the Superpower resources, which have nudge questions to help you explore and start to explore figures and colour and things like that, so that you can you can do some slightly more in-depth analysis of the image as well. But I'm gonna hop out because it would be really exciting to hear how the next step would be to explore creative responses to the painting. Emily, I'd love to hear your ideas that you're going to share with us today.
Okay, so for people who haven't seen me before, don't know who I am. Yes, I work for Art Bytes, but I also was a teacher, an art and photography teacher in a secondary school for 15 years. So this is my kind of bag. So I am just going to share my screen, and I have put together some possible pieces that you could look at. Has that worked on your screen?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay,
Yeah.
so when I was a secondary teacher, I left teaching last year to carry on being an artist and do little freelance jobs and things. This was one of the things that I absolutely loved teaching the kids, and it was showing them new artists or pieces of artwork. One, for example, that comes into my head is the Tracy Emin's The Unmade Bed, because initially the conversation is, well, it's just a bed. But then we would talk for 20 minutes, half an hour about why the bed is unmade, etc., etc. What's near the bed, what is around the bed. And similar to this picture here with all of the different items that are there, it's really important to ask them what is in the picture first so that they can actually observe and see what is in there, you know, with the superpower of looking as well. So my line of work is looking at a picture, but analysing it and then turning it so that the children can access it. So yes, they can access this picture and they can talk about it and they can see it, but then how could we take elements of this picture and turn it into their own? So you can see on here that I've looked at portraits. So portraits is a really simple one to use, and I don't want people to be panicking thinking, but I can't draw portraits. It's not about drawing the portrait. If you look at the bottom right there, you could take a series of pictures of the children, just some self-portraits. We could print those off, and if you can see just on the bottom right there, they actually got some clear acetate over the top, and they're drawing with a black line going all the way around the outside edge. Once you've got this black line, that can then form the picture that is just next to it, which is the orange and reddy kind of colour that you've got going on there. You could create some patterned backgrounds very simply just with collage if you wanted to. So just getting loads of different types of papers, creating loads of backgrounds, and then layering your portrait over the top. That is one way that you could do this. The second element that you could do is Iris, which is the lady. I think she died, I think it was last year. She was 101. And if you don't know her, you should look into her because she was, what a woman. She wore some incredible outfits. So this one, you can see that some of it is actually being done digitally. So you could take the picture of the child and do it digitally. If you've got access to iPads and you've got access to computers in your primary school, then that's something that you could do and just add those over the top. Or very simply, you can just change it so that it's not digital, and you could use it so that it's collage and layering those different collage pieces on the top there. And then lastly, on the top right, you've got a monoprint. So if anybody hasn't done monoprinting before, it's a method of printing. And I would say that you would start with that one first because it's quite simple to do, but really effective. And you can see how they've created some different backgrounds here. So already you can see how just those three different elements, so you've got acetate, you've got continuous line, you could do some continuous line portraits, bit of collage, a bit of monoprinting, and you've got some different elements that you could use there. That is all taken from this one picture. So all I did was look at this picture and think, it's a portrait of a person, talk about portraits, what do portraits do? And then developing it into their own portrait. So you're linking the artist that way. So the second part of this is the other interesting part of it is that it's also Black History Month, which is this month. And so this is something that you could also talk about, and the fact that Laberna actually won the Turner Prize in 2017, and she was the first Black woman to do so. So that is another talking point that you could bring forward with that. There are other images on the Superpower of Looking as well, so you could have a look through there and see if there's any others that you would be interested in as well. So I've just picked out 4 different elements that this is how I would do this. And I'm not saying that I'm correct at all. I'm just saying this is where my ideas flow. So straight away, the first thing that I saw when I looked at this picture was this concertina sleeve, because I'm just thinking, oh yeah, he has got his concertina sleeve going on and he's rocking it. So you could talk about that. You could even link it back in history. So you could add a bit of cross-curricular there, linking it back to history and costumes within history and why we maybe used those big like lapels that people used to use, or why cuffs were invented. So I'm in particular looking at this concertina sleeve because it's interesting that it's yellow. So out of the whole picture, the two things that are yellow are the tape measure and the sleeve. And that's really drawing your eye just to that section there, which makes it very interesting to look at. The other part of it is just down the bottom. You've got some simple tessellations. So for anybody who doesn't know what a tessellation is, it's like interlocking shapes, but it creates that repeated pattern. So you could do something that was very simple, and I'm going to show you in a second, that, or you could do something a little bit more complicated, but this is where the children could actually start creating their own patterns. You could do a whole project based around African patterns. You could do printing from those. You could do collage, loads of different stuff, repeated patterns. And then lastly, just in the pocket there, you've got that beautiful pair of scissors with that really orange, the vibrant orange, just really pinging off the page. You could look into objects. What are the children's favourite objects? What objects would you put in your pocket? What objects do you have in your room? What objects mean something to you, and what do they mean to you? So the first one was the concertina sleeve. So if you're looking at that concertina sleeve, you could turn this very simply, and I'm trying to keep these really simple. So literally taking a concertina piece of paper, so you can see down the bottom there on the right, you're taking a really long piece of paper and you're turning it into a concertina, and you could do a different artwork on each side, or on the left hand side you've got a long strip of paper. You're getting all the different materials out. I used to do this on a big long table in the classroom, put all the tables together, all the children would stand around the table, and they would I'd play music. So we'd have like rock music, classical music, loads of different stuff. And for everyone, they would get a different material, and they would close their eyes as they were listening to the music, and they would draw onto the piece of paper. They absolutely loved it. You could keep it, if you don't like it getting too messy, then you could keep to things like felt tip pens, colour pencils, all that kind of stuff. But imagine you've got this lovely long piece of paper that the children have done all this layering over the top of, and then you could turn it into something that's concertina. That could be something that you could then, put forward for Art Bytes, or, as part of your Key Stage 2, even Key Stage 1 if you're doing those types of things. So as well as that, you've got your simple tessellations. Now, for those people who are not into their artists, the main tessellation person that you need to look at is this one, and I've just written it on the screen for you. It's just down the bottom right there. It's Escher. So if you look into Escher, you can see the beautiful work that he's done. Some of them are absolutely incredible, but you're just taking these simple shapes. So you can see how the birds are turning into fish. Now that's Escher, very complicated, but he was very mathematical. You could do something much simpler, like the top left one there, where you're just looking at some of those geometric patterns. You could even link it to geometric patterns within Africa, within African patterns, which could be quite interesting as well. Then you've got African prints. Now, you could go wild with this one. This is just a simple one that I've got here, and I've got a couple of top tips for you. If you've never done this before, is you can use some styrofoam blocks, which you can buy, but if your budget is low, then you can actually go to takeaways and ask if you can buy some of the takeaway things. And I used to cut out the bottoms of the cartons of the takeaways and use those for printing. So you can see on the piece of paper there, you've got that repeated pattern. So you can talk about repeated pattern. You could link it back to the picture again and talk about his jacket and how his has got a repeated pattern. You've got all these amazing, beautiful colours on the left-hand side here. Something quite simple like the bottom one, or in the middle, you've got big circles. You could use paper plates. You could do lots of repeated patterns. You could do this onto fabric. You could do lino printing if you don't want to do the styrofoam printing. Yeah, there's loads of things you could have a look down the different avenues with that. And have a look at some African artists as well, some really interesting ones out there. And then last one, this was always a favourite in the classroom, which is Michael Craig Martin. So I've tried to put a couple of examples on there. So if anyone who doesn't know, Michael Craig Martin is a very famous artist, and I think he's currently in the Tate now. But he became famous due to these really vibrant colours and layering objects on top of each other, and they look really interesting. So we used to do this digitally, so you could do it if you have Photoshop and things in your school, or I also did it physically as well. So you can see that this one here is a page taken from a sketchbook. So quite simply, if the children can't draw, or if they just struggle with drawing, or SEND school that maybe they've got difficulty holding various things, then you could actually print these off as photocopies and then trace them, and you could trace them that way. You could then copy that tracing onto different backgrounds. So just on the top there, I've got that newspaper in the background, which looks quite effective, and you can start to layer them. And you can see the one at the bottom with the different colours on there, where they've done some painting skills. And then lastly, you've got a monoprint that is just on the top there. Oh no, sorry, that's a styrofoam print or a lino print using different colours. So you can see how the children could actually take their own objects, like I mentioned before. Instead of it being a pair of scissors, it could be, what's your favourite object? I mean, all the time I used to get the classic computer console, which was quite depressing, but that was their favourite object. But to me, it'd be like a paintbrush, or it'd be I think a paint, loads of different objects, and they could start to draw around them. So you could do some observational drawings from those. So those are just a couple of ideas that I've kind of put together. I hope that made sense and why I chose those different ones. But if you do have any questions, please, we're going to open up the chat now, I think, anyway. So I'm going to stop sharing, Jenny. There we go.
Thanks, Emily, for so much food for thought, so much
inspiration.
Sorry,
I get very excited about it. Sorry. So many possibilities.
We absolutely can kind of open it up to the chat, and if anyone would like to unmute and ask questions, but there are already a few things in the chat that we could have a look at to start with. Amy asks, are these activities and resources just for Key Stage 2? And are there any aimed at Key Stage 1? I can speak to Superpower, and then perhaps Emily, you might be able to speak to the sorts of activities that you've just suggested. Superpower, generally our resources are aimed at Key Stage 2, but we do write them to be very adaptable and very flexible. So we know that lots of teachers have used them in Key Stage 1, and you might pick and choose which questions you think will suit your class, or you might be drawn towards some artworks that you think might work with your Key Stage 1s more than others. Emily, you might want to speak to the sorts of art activities that would work particularly well with those key stages.
All of those you could still do with Key Stage 1. You just do it in a much simpler way. So for example, the styrofoam printing, I've got a little girl and she's 6, and even in Key Stage 1 she was doing the styrofoam printing, and it's literally having a bit of styrofoam and getting a pencil and making a mark into it. So that could be, especially for EYFS, that could be their first type of printing, potato printing, that kind of thing, just making it a little bit easier for them to hold the things as well, which would be quite interesting.
Thank you, Jacqueline, for giving us lots of food for thought, actually, in your comment in the chat, speaking about how within your art curriculum, you've actually worked really hard to think very carefully about the references we might previously have used to African artists or prints artworks, and NSEAD has got some really great training and resources online, which highlight that Africa is actually a whole continent with a diverse range of cultures, and we do have to think very carefully about how we speak, don't we? And something we're all reflecting and we're all learning, aren't we? But that's something really, really helpful to share.
I love that, because you could really hone in on all of the different places and how they use prints differently, and the symbology behind it, and why different symbols mean something to them in different places, which could be beautiful as well.
Yeah, I only put that in there just because it was something that was really focused on for us recently. And in my
Yeah.
entire teaching career, I had never even realized that, that could perhaps be seen as problematic to some. And actually, it's really opened up this much more sensitive and eye-opening way of looking at artwork from different continents. And so
Absolutely. It's
I
really
always say,
important.
Maya Angelou says, do your best until you know better. So I'm trying to do better.
Yeah. And I think as well, like I'm 40, so I was brought up in the time when it was just known as Africa and African
Yeah,
prints. Thankfully,
exactly.
my mum actually took me to Africa when I was 16. I was very, very lucky. So that opened up a whole other kettle of fish for me. But not many people get that experience, do they? So yeah, it's just an understanding different places.
It's good to have that nuanced approach. So I think that's
Yeah.
really wonderful. It's worth mentioning actually that when we were showing the film earlier, that was Marlene Wiley, who's the president of NCAD, and she's on the judging panel. So she's
Brilliant.
very tuned in, along with people like the director of the
Thanks,
Big Four,
Elisa.
Access Art, and so on. I forgot to mention.
Elisa says thank you, but she needs to go.
Yeah, we're running out of time, aren't we?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, we've just reached the 5 o'clock mark. If anyone does want to stop and ask any questions, I'm sure we've got a few minutes. But otherwise, I'll end the recording at this point of saying thank you so much for joining us. It's been lovely to be able to share the programmes with you. I hope it's given you some inspiration and some resources that you can go away and use and keep in touch.
Just added a quick link in there before we close it.